The sun hung low over the dusty plains of Texas, painting everything in shades of orange and sorrow. Clara Mae sat on the porch, hands pressed over her belly, feeling the faint flutter inside. She was barely 19, and her heart was heavier than the world around her. The townsfolk had already started whispering, words like shame and sin, floating through the dry air like dust devils. Her mother, Ethel, was a hard woman, thin, sharp-tongued, and proud in a way that often hurt more than helped. She'd lost her husband to whiskey and her dignity to poverty. When she found out about Clara's pregnancy, she didn't cry. She just stared at her daughter like she was something broken. "You've ruined us," she said one night, voice shaking with fury. "Ain't no man gonna marry you now. Ain't no family in this town will speak to me after this." Clara tried to explain how she'd fallen for the wrong man, how he'd promised marriage before he disappeared into the wild country. But Ethel didn't want reasons. She wanted redemption. So, she made a deal. 3 days later, a wagon rolled up to their broken fence. The man who stepped down from it was enormous, broad shoulders, beard thick as a bear's mane, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Folks called him Boone Calhoun, a cowboy who lived far out near the ridge where no one dared go. He owned cattle, land, and a loneliness that stretched for miles. Ethel met him by the gate. Clara stood behind the door, her heart thudding as she listened. "You said you'd trade," Ethel muttered. "1 cow, and she's yours to take. She'll cook, clean, do whatever a woman's meant to." Boone's voice rumbled low. "You sure about this? She's no good here. At least with you, she'll be fed." And just like that, Ethel sold her daughter for a milk cow. Boone didn't say a word as Clara was pushed out the door, carrying nothing but a faded shawl and the child growing inside her. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The ride to Boone's ranch felt endless. The man barely spoke, his huge hands holding the reins with calm strength. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't gentle either. Just quiet, like someone who'd seen too much and learned to keep it all inside. When they reached his land, Clara saw nothing but endless grass, a cabin, and a barn that looked older than time. Boone helped her down but didn't touch her again. "You can stay here," he said, nodding to the small cabin. "Ain't much, but it's safe. You'll eat when I eat. You'll work when I work." She nodded, too tired to cry. Days turned into weeks. Clara cleaned, cooked, and tried to keep up with the heavy chores. Boone mostly stayed out tending his cattle, sometimes coming home after dark with dirt on his hands and silence in his eyes. They hardly talked, but he always left her a plate of food. That small kindness meant more than words. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch, staring at the sunset. Without thinking, she brought him coffee and sat down beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Boone said quietly, "Why'd your ma do it?" Clara's throat tightened. "Said I brought shame. Said no man would ever want me." Boone let out a slow breath. "She's wrong." The words hit her like a soft thunder. She blinked back tears, not sure if he meant it or was just being kind. But something changed after that night. He started showing her how to milk the cows, how to ride a horse, even how to shoot coyotes when they came too close. They worked side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes just letting the quiet wind fill the space. And slowly, the fear that once filled Clara's heart began to fade. Winter came, fierce and biting. One night, as snow fell thick over the ranch, Clara felt the sharp pains start. The baby was coming too. Soon. Boone heard her cries and ran inside, his massive frame moving with panic. He'd delivered calves before, but this was different, this was fragile and human. He boiled water, fetched towels, did everything she said through clenched teeth. Hours passed like years. Then, just before dawn, the tiny cry of a newborn filled the room. Clara held her baby boy close, tears streaming down her face. Boone stood there, looking at them like he was seeing a miracle. "He's strong," Boone said softly. "Looks just like his ma." That night, something inside him broke open, a tenderness he'd buried long ago. From that day on, he cared for Clara and the baby as if they were his own. He built a cradle from cedar wood. He brought her wildflowers even though she never asked. And sometimes, when the baby slept, they'd sit by the fire, their hands brushing by accident and staying there a little longer each time. Months passed. Spring came again, painting the land in color. Clara had found peace in a place she never thought she'd belong. Boone had become her safe place, a man who never raised his voice, never judged, just stood beside her when the world turned cold. But the past has a way of finding you. One afternoon, a wagon approached the ranch. Clara froze when she saw her mother step down. Ethel looked thinner, harder, and older than before. "I came to see the baby," she said, though her eyes darted more toward Boone's cattle than her daughter's face. Clara held her child close. "You sold me, Mama. You don't get to come back now." Ethel's voice trembled. "I did what I had to. I was hungry, desperate." Boone cut her off quietly. "You traded your daughter for a cow. Ain't no excuse for that." Ethel turned red, but Boone's calm stare broke something in her. She dropped her eyes, muttered something, and left without looking back. As the wagon disappeared, Clara felt Boone's hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe her anything," he said. She nodded, leaning into his touch. Years later, Clara would often think back to that day, to the girl who was once treated like nothing, and to the man who gave her a home without asking for anything in return. Boone never asked her to be his wife. One morning, she simply said, "I think I already am," and he smiled for the first time in years. They raised their boy under that big Texas sky, teaching him that love isn't about blood or shame or what the world thinks, it's about who stays when everyone else leaves. And whenever the sun went down, Boone would wrap an arm around Clara, whispering, "You were never a bargain, Clara Mae. You were a blessing," and she believed him.